right, so today on the podcast we have Dirk Ehlert. He is a composer, entrepreneur, international traveler, a king of templates and production music. Dirk, glad to have you on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, and wow, what an intro. Thank you so much, appreciate it.
So, can you tell me about how you got started in music? Did you grow up in a musical family? How'd you start composing for media?
Funny enough, no musical background in the family at all, besides my granddad once told me that he played flute in school or something like that back beginning of 1900 something. So no musical background there, but I was lucky enough to attend I think the similar approach in the US would be like high school. So the from 7th till 11th grade in Germany, or till 13th grade. I was able to attend a school that had a focus on arts in general, like art, acting, and they did like school musicals. And we kind of founded a school band in these days. And this is when I got my first through. I tried to make it as short as possible. I was able to get my hands on a Korg 01 WFD, that old Korg workstation, which was a dream come true at that time for me. It was about like 14, 15. I had dabbled a little bit with keyboards, with piano before, and I was in a choir, in a pop choir, so gospel and pop music, and had some singing training with that, and that's pretty much it. But that 01 WFD led me into like diving deeper into synth sounds and learning to play piano, and also even on that tiny LCD screen of the 01 WFD, like editing, and it had like eight track sequencer built in that you could like create your own sequences, and that was very fun and very painstakingly. It took a long time to get everything right, and but it was fun. And yeah, from there it just went on and on. One thing led to the next. I had never really any formal education in terms of music, so I'm pretty much self-taught. But I did attend university, so I started studying English and German at university, and dropped German, I think not even the first semester in, because it was like boring as hell. And I thought, okay, I don't want to do that. So I kept with English, and because of the fact that I never had any formal education, I had no idea about music theory and all that stuff, and all the kind of expert view on music, and all the special words and whatever they use for music theory. I had no idea about that. I just played from my gut, what I liked. And so it never occurred to me to actually think about a proper musical education going further. But actually my friends convinced me to apply for the actual study of music at the university where I was. So I went to the rehearsals there, or to the entry test. And as expected, I failed the theoretical one miserably, even though I tried to prepare that. And but they had a practical part as well, where I just sat down, took a guitar, played a song, sat on the piano, played a song, and sang to it. And they kind of said, "Okay, we see there's a musician in front of us." So and that's how I get in. But still, didn't finish. So I went through that through.
Got some training though, yeah.
Got some training on piano, singing, and all that good stuff. Not even composition at that time. Always had music as a hobby, and like I said, I didn't finish the studies. It got a little out of hand, the time you spend on studying and the time you spend in the university cafe and doing anything else that has not anything to do with studies. And at some point, I had to ask myself, what I want to do. And I switched completely and went into web design and designing stuff, and worked as a freelancer doing websites and stuff like that. Later down the line, got in touch with a company that kind of hired me instead of doing freelance work for them. I've been working with them for a few years, and the boss of the company was a very, very good guitarist. And we kind of set up a project that's called Ensodica. That was like in 2011, 2012. And that was my first proper band project with a really proper release. It was like symphonic metal inspired by Nightwish, Within Temptation, the likes. And that was my first foray into orchestral arranging and stuff like that, because I had to write the orchestra parts for that symphonic metal stuff. And I remember it was, I think Kirk Hunter was the stuff that they had back then. Quick while after, so we did the debut album, and as oftentimes with the debut releases, the band fell apart after that. And I also lost my job then, and my kid was born, and then that was pretty much 2011. I stood in front of the decision, what I'm going to do. Do I go back to web design or go back to freelancing? And that was the moment when I said, okay, let's give it one more try to try music as an avenue. So I went back to web design, but took music in there. And back then in the day, it was like, I started out on Audio Jungle. That is a marketplace where you can sell your music online for a kind of small fee, like $14-20, something like that, for use in media. And I still remember today what it felt like when I sold my very first license and just realized that someone out there in the world is willing to pay $20 to use your music in whatever production they do. This was the moment I got not the hang of it. That took way longer, but it didn't take long to drop web design completely and just focus on the music side of things. And that was also the time when Facebook came up, and I kind of used that as a tool for marketing, not for marketing, but for networking and getting in touch with people. Before that, there just was no chance to talk with people from the UK or from the US and get to know people. Then just one step led to the next. And I think 2011, I was able to win a GTEC-driven creativity competition. So they had this competition for photography, videography, and music, and they had the areas of amateur and professional. And I won music professional, and they had an exhibition in London that I attended, I think, November 2011. And that's where I met Agus Gonzalez Lancharo, who is now the head of Really Slow Motion in LA, and a trailer music label. And he told me about kind of setting up Really Slow Motion. It didn't exist back then, and he asked me if I want to write a track for that, and that's how I kind of got in touch with the trailer world. And then he put me forward to DOS Brains, who I've been working with for years then, and from there it just went on and on and on. I'm trying to be brief on that.
That's excellent. Yeah. So as far as the next step, when did you move to Los Angeles?
Yeah, so I moved to Los Angeles in April 2018. So in 2017, I had a nomination for the Hollywood Music and Media Award for one of my tracks from my album Elements. And I think that might have been helpful in acquiring the O1 visa, like that visa that the US hands out for exceptional abilities, like for sports, directors, actors, musicians. That's the O1 visa. And that's the one I was granted, which allows you to stay in the US for 3 years. And you can also extend it later down the line. I have friends who live there for 25 years, just extending their O1 every 3 years. And settled down in LA for 3 years, met my nowadays business partner, Ram. We are running our own company together. Yeah, 2020 obviously hit hard the whole world with everything going on and COVID and not going into the political side of things, but there were a few things that were going on also in the US political landscape that didn't really sit well with me. And but most importantly, COVID made us consider going back to Europe. And since then, end of 2020, we said, okay, let's go back. And now we're in Spain.
Beautiful Spain. I like it.
It's not a bad place to hang out.
Right.
Well, it's called the European California. I stuck to the weather pattern and the sun for sure.
Yeah, I just remember you saying that you're one of the reasons that you loved being out here in California was just because of the weather. Compared to like where you're at in Germany, it was like, is it usually kind of hit or miss as far as like rain or crazy weather conditions?
Yeah, it's definitely way more gray in fall and gray in spring and a lot of rain in spring. So you get like 2 to possibly sometimes 3 months of nice summer weather. But I just don't want to live in a place where the weather sucks like 9 months of the year, you know?
Yeah.
So if I have 1 month of bad weather or rain or kind of something close to winter, I'm fine with that. The other 11 months,
Yeah, I
I'm
could deal
good
with that.
Yeah, right. Blue sky and sun.
So you composed a whole bunch of cues for production music, library music. What was your process on that? And I mean, it looks like you were doing maybe 100, 200 cues a year. Like, were you just cranking out this music on a daily basis, like a new cue every day or something?
Good question. It was way, way more when I started out. So I'm not
Sure.
writing as much today, which is also due to the fact that I now run my own label and just have to take care of creative direction for other composers and stuff like that. So once you set up your own label, it will become harder to write music yourself. That's for sure. And
you're listening to a lot more music.
Right, and setting up briefs and meeting clients and stuff like that. So there's just a whole different story involved. But when I started out, like I said, I started on Audio Jungle, quickly came into contact with a music library in New York. This is kind of where I really got into the nitty gritty of it, and they sent me briefs on what they need. There was a lot of music for America's Next Top Model, reality TV, Brad World, these fashion shows and stuff like that. They had a lot of placements in there, and so that was intense, but also fun. And it was a great learning experience too, especially when it comes to stepping out of your comfort zone or writing something that you've never done before or that you just are not familiar with. And I mean, in the media world or the world of media composing, it is a great tool in your arsenal to be able to adjust to new styles, even when you're not familiar with or when something is out of your comfort zone. There are certain limits to it, of course. You can't do everything. But I think just specializing on your favorite genre or just writing in your favorite genre is also not the way going forward in this type of industry. So you need to try to adapt. But that's the same for film composing and movie composers. You need to be able to create a wide range of emotions in a wide range of styles, possibly, depending on the client's need and what fits the scene. So yeah, that was kind of learning by doing.
Got your feet wet.
Yeah, right.
For people who are wanting to get into production music, like for me, like when I was talking to you about the idea or the interest in it, and like when you were talking about docu-scores and like in the early times, I was very new to it, and it was very like, oh, like how do you go about writing music for TV and media and that sort of thing? And I wanted to see, for people wanting to get into it, is there any sort of like maybe like 3 things that you would say as far as like to help people get in the right direction? Tips as far as arranging and things like that?
Yes and yes and yes. So to get your feet wet, obviously you need to kind of analyze what's out there. You can't fly blind in this industry, so you need to go to the pretty much known names and look around what is out there first in terms of quality, but also in terms of how it's arranged, what kind of structure do these tracks have, possibly which type of tracks gets licensed more than others. So like BMG production music, Universal production music, Extreme music. So the big houses that get a lot of placements, it helps to look into their catalogs and see, okay, what are these guys doing? What do they have in terms of content? What do they put out a lot? And maybe what is, if there's anything, what is missing from the catalog? So I'm not talking about how to get into these, just to get a feel for what production music is and how to understand how it works. The second thing is, if you don't like it or not, but you actually have to watch a bunch of TV because that's where your stuff ends up being used in. So watch these reality shows when you think about going into reality TV or underscore and stuff for that kind of stuff. Yeah, you have to watch TV to understand the medium that you want to work for.
Craig already watched a lot of Dancing with the Stars, so he's ready to roll there.
Yeah.
Dance moms,
swamp people, forensic Biggest files. Loser. I'm all about it. What'd you call me? No, I'm just kidding. When I was first doing, some writing stuff for docu-scores, like that was one of the things. Writing music, you tend to always, your kind of drifts to wherever there's music, and whether it's movies or TV or anything like that. it definitely made me pay attention more to it, even though like you'll hear certain parts of music played for like a very short amount of time sometimes, but you definitely become more aware of like, oh, like what types of sounds are they using, or like how things build. And I think that's a great tip, because yeah, it's like you're seeing it in action. It's like watching a film score. I mean, sometimes you might come across a movie or something where the music is just bad, and try not to, get inspired by when something might be done in a way that's not good. But I think for like a lot of TV, yeah, you're definitely seeing it in action, and I found it pretty helpful, especially in just talking to you, because you have such a great, I mean, you've been doing it for so long, as far as like structuring stuff or building things, or like every so many bars, bringing in a new element or taking something away, or stuff like that. I found to be super helpful.
Yeah, that was the other thing that Nathan was just it's the studying how it's used, etc. Of course, production music, especially for reality TV, but also trailer music, which is just like a branch of production music, so to say, though with their own set of rules and specialties. But overall, it can tend to be a bit formulaic, which is kind of in the nature of the game, because there are some restrictions that you put onto the type of cues. Obviously, take that with a grain of salt. Every rule has its exceptions, and you're more than welcome to break the rules and come up with your own stuff. But with this type of music, you have to think about the use case, and you have to think about the editor side of things. So what do they need from this track? So if you have a track that gets used in a TV show, for example, and halfway through you modulate to a different key, it may be tougher for them to align and reuse and recut the stuff at free will, so to say, because the end doesn't match with the beginning. There is a major difference between just writing the music that you like to write, so to say, or just for the sheer joy of it, for the purpose of writing something or creating something, or writing something with a specific aim in mind, like syncing to picture. And over the years, there are just some, again, with a grain of salt, some rules that have established that make tracks more usable over others. And this is just, usually you find that these tracks that stick to these rules are the ones that get the most mileage out of them, the most use. Because it also makes sense when you do that kind of stuff, you really have to put on the hat and try to imagine, how does an editor work? How can you make the life of the editor easy? Because their job is extremely fast-paced. They don't have time to listen through a minute of music to decide if they use it or not.
Right.
Like I said, that decision happens in the first 5, if even 10 seconds. And it's really like, next. I was in a bunch of edit bays and have seen these guys work, and this is insane. I couldn't do that. But in the end, they need to find what fits the mood they're looking for fast. And so you better make their life easy, because once they start to connect your name with products that work, they tend to also look for names that provide the music, because they know they had been successful with these providers in the past as well. So it definitely helps if if you leave a good impression with your work, meaning you have proper sync points, you have proper edit points, like meaning you have a pause after 30 seconds where they can cut in, which makes it easy for them to cut and go in and out of the tune. Like I mentioned in the beginning, if you change the key throughout, it will be very much harder for them to align different parts of a track, for example, to make it fit to the scene. So these are just small elements that make their life easier, and this is ultimately a goal.
Can you talk about the formula that's kind of standard, like the intro and like how you swell in and out, and then you have the pause, like you were saying, with good tails?
So there are two different ways of approaching this. Let's call this the ideal structure. The ideal structure is you have a main theme or a main mood that is established within 5 to 8 bars, say. That's your main theme, the chorus, so to say. And what you want to do is you want to start with that chorus. No intro, just straight into the chorus. So, okay, this is what the song is about. Immediately when you listen to it for 2, 3, 4 seconds, okay, this is what the song sounds like. And then you can start from there. Then you can go down, build your, for example, ABA structure or ABAB, depending on what type of music also it is. But usually you have like introduction or like main part of the track to get right into it. A section with a little bit of a build-up, B section, which usually contrasts what's happening in the A section because you don't want to get too repetitive. Mm-hmm. And finally, possibly A again with a build-up to the climax or to the end. And usually part. ending with a, most importantly, have a clear ending, never do a fade out because they need these stabby ending, stab mm-hmm. endings or defined endings to oftentimes to better sync it to picture. And when you have something that is not much developing in terms of melodic or structure, especially with underscore and drone type of tracks that you often use for the survival shows and stuff like that, when you need the light tension going on with just something underneath, there's not much happening in these type of tracks. So what you can do is just try to introduce a new element every 4 bars or every 8 bars, like mm-hmm. Start with the drone and the bubbly synth underneath. 4 bars later, you bring in a percussion loop or a tambourine or something. 4 bars later again, you can bring in a kick. Then 4 bars later, you can take the drums completely out again, or just leave the drums running, take the drones out. So just that you have some element of interest that avoids being too repetitive for the track.
Yeah.
And there are genres that make it easier. And then there are also genres that make still that pretty hard to not get too repetitive.
So did you take what you learned from Really Slow Motion and these other production houses and then bring that all together into your newest company, which is DocuScores, and you have reality scores and trailer scores?
Well, yes. And of course, I mean, I have been working in the field for more than 10 years now as a production music composer. And obviously there are events like the Production Music Academy that does the Production Music Conference once a year where you attend panels. So there's a lot of information available out there meanwhile. And also through working on it myself as a composer and getting feedback from other publishers, like you need to change this to make it workable, etc. You get a feel for that. It's just if you do it long enough, you just get proficient at it. So I know the ins and outs of the composer side of things, and that obviously helps to translate that into the publisher side of things and let other people on your team know what is needed or what is essential to make it workable for the client. So that is definitely has been helpful to be in that area long enough to know the one side and then getting into the other side, which means not as a composer, but as a publisher. So telling other composers what we need as a company to provide the clients with. And then obviously you get feedback from clients, what they need and what works for them. So this is an ongoing, ever learning process. But of course, you try to get better at it over time.
Yeah. So it's a big part of it is communication with both sides, right? You're communicating to the client who's paying for it, and you're also communicating to all of the composers on the team.
Exactly.
It's a big job.
But also a fun one. That's what I just want to say.
Since I've been watching your videos and stuff on YouTube for a long time, even before I ever had the chance to meet you. And one of the things I've always seen is how you've kind of like evolved your composing templates over time. And it seems like it's always been a pretty important part of your workflow and just being able to crank out music so quickly. So do you want to talk a little bit about that and how you've kind of started developing some templates that you've been actually releasing as well?
You sure you want to get me started on that?
You know what? Never mind. Let's change the subject. Oh, yeah.
No. Yeah, sure. So I'm a big fan of templates because I feel that templates help you get across the finish line faster than setting everything up from scratch. That starts with if you are just a singer-songwriter and have a mic and an acoustic guitar and open up your DAW and you want to record a song. If you have something where you open up a track and you have your vocal track and your guitar track already armed and ready to go, and you just need to hit record, or if you open it up and need to set up your routing for the mic and need to set up your routing for the acoustic guitar, which takes time and just takes away from the creativity that you could use right away when like this mini template with already pre-made tracks is ready to go. And for me, it's the same principle, and it doesn't really matter if it's 2 tracks that are there ready to go or if it's 1,000 tracks ready to go. Depending on your system specs, of course, and all the stuff that goes along with it. But for me, I was always on the hunt for something that allows me to write down as soon as inspiration strikes without thinking about, do I need to load a guitar there now? And also genre independent. So I wanted to be able to, if I have an idea for a rock track, to lay that down, whereas in the next moment I might have an idea for an ethnic inspired orchestral track. So I wanted to have all these instruments at least somehow quickly available, not if not even everything loaded, because that would be insane, like having a 3,000 track template. That, I mean, meanwhile
you've had some of those.
Good enough to yeah, right. Meanwhile, the machines are good enough to even realize that with like hundreds and hundreds of gigabytes of RAM available now on a single machine. But nevertheless, just to find some shortcuts to reduce the time it takes me to browse through my sound library or to look for a sound. And with doing this for 10 years, there inevitably comes some kind of expertise in the field and just knowing your way around and how to do it. And at some point, it was kind of also COVID related. I mean, a lot of stuff has been breaking off and falling away in this industry as well when COVID hit. And everyone had to look for, not necessarily for a way out, but maybe for possibilities to supplement whatever you're doing through other means, through passive income, etc. So I just asked myself, okay, what can I do well, and how can I monetize that? And so that was the idea of setting up a shop for templates, because I know templates is something that I'm good at. And from my talks on social media or conversations on social media or other VI control, etc., just conversation with other composers, I knew that there were a lot of people that were struggling with that part, and either didn't really have an idea or didn't have the energy to sit down and properly go through it. And so it's kind of like two flies with one stone, or whatever. I just don't know the exact English. 2 birds with one stone. So you know what I mean? Just helping people to get across the finish line faster, while also kind of creating a passive income for me by just creating a product that I can sell whenever somebody needs it.
And you have a Cubase template and a Vienna Ensemble Pro template. What else do you have?
Well, it has grown over time. So I started out, the initial idea for my template was actually nothing that was library specific. In my experience, this goes with templates in general. There are actually 2 approaches that you can do. There's that like 2,000 track template where you have everything loaded and ready to go, be it Vienna Ensemble Pro or a single system that is able to handle it. And I have been working with these type of templates for years. At some point, I just realized, as much as I like to have everything available and just get in, write, export, done, it still tends to be kind of stagnant in a way, because all these sounds are preloaded and they work, they work, and you rarely change it because it works. So there's no need to change anything. Of course, every template is like an ever ongoing process. You acquire new libraries, you change the template, etc. But overall, it's very stagnant.
You get stuck in a rut.
Yeah, you get stuck in a rut a little bit. And so my idea was, okay, what could I do to actually rediscover the libraries that I have? I feel the moment you realize you're a real composer is when you buy something only to realize you already bought that 2 years ago. So that happened for me as well. Not that defines being a real composer. I just find it funny, because when I came up with the idea for my quick load template, that was the first one that I did, was to step away and get rid of that being stuck in a rut by actually knowing what sounds do I have available on my system. And Contact has that neat feature of organizing all your stuff in that quick load menu, so you don't go through that library panel. but create like aliases for all the sounds that you have. It requires a little bit of investment of time because you have to set that up yourself one time to go through all your drives and to all your contact instruments and add that to the quick load database. Actually, for me, it really helped to rediscover some hidden gems that I never really thought that I had, or that I knew I had, but never really looked into it. So I rediscovered some of my libraries. And now this initial template is everything set up, routed, groupings, effects, everything is there, but all the instances are empty. And but through the quick load menu, you have a very quick way of, like, I need strings violin 1, and then I go into the folder and see all my different, you can set it up in any kind of way. I have it in a way that I have my different developers. So I could say, okay, I need Soundiron strings, violin 1, and then I have my Soundiron violins 1 in that folder. Or I need Cinematic Studio strings or Spitfire or whatever. So that way, I am not stuck to the sounds that I always use in my template, but also don't need to set up everything from scratch. I just need to load the sounds that I feel are appropriate for the current track that I'm working on. And it allows me a little more freedom to try out different sounds that I wouldn't have had tried otherwise if I were just sitting in my fixed template. Then I, meanwhile, have like a hybrid approach of this. So I still have some libraries that I just always use. I know that I always need them. So I have like a VE Pro frame that has the stagnant part, so to say, but then I have the quick load template additionally in the session, so I can load instruments as needed on the fly or on the go. And yeah, that quick load template was the first idea for the shop that I did, and then from there it went on by customer request. Do you have a template for Audio Imperial Nucleus? Do you have a template for Metropolis Arc and stuff like that? And sometimes I just thought about myself what might be useful, and this is an ongoing process. So far I have Audio Imperial Nucleus and Jaeger. Jaeger is more like a trailer oriented template. There is Metropolis Arc, there is Sonoscore the orchestra, and some stuff planned for the future. I also have like this quick load template also in a version for complete control.
Nice.
And the last one that I released is also an empty template, but to give you a head start if you want to incorporate VN Ensemble Pro. So that is like an empty template with all the routings in place where you can, in a modular approach, either have it on the same system or even use up to 3-4 slave machines and a master machine with VE Pro on different computers. So it's very modular, but still, these templates are not ready to go. You still need them to cultivate them with your sounds that you have available.
Right. So you just did the routing for them and got that stuff set up.
You did
Exactly.
like most of the boring work that nobody wants to do. I don't know. I maybe I'm weird. I find that stuff fun. Like there's times I've just like made new templates just because it's like I like the setting up and going through, and I don't know. It's like almost kind of relaxing in a way. Because it's like you're just kind of putting something together, and I enjoy that part of it. I know some people are very.
I think there are people who have a knack for it, and there are people who don't. And people who have a knack for it I find it meditative actually to create templates.
Exactly, same.
Well, I'll take the other side of that. I hate it.
Yeah, he's like, give me a blank page, and I'll build it myself.
I think routing all the reverbs and everything and just getting things set up for plug and play is brilliant, though. That's a pain point for a lot of people.
I mean, that's even a great simplistic template to have, is just like, I have something like that too, where it's just a blank project that just has a bunch of effects tracks in Cubase with just like specific effects you normally always use, or maybe some group tracks or something that you just route everything to for stemming out or something like that. Like that's another really cool, worthwhile template having. If you're not into having like all your tracks and everything laid out, like just having that.
It's nothing else than just having macros for just stuff that you do over and over. And I mean, if you can take a shortcut for that and reduce the time it takes you to do that, why set up the reverb synths every time anew when you open a project? Like you said, it makes sense to have a template where you at least have most of the reverbs or groups that you regularly use already set up, even if you don't have any instruments loaded or any audio tracks prepared. But even if you as a guitarist recording guitars, it makes sense to have a guitar channel prepped with your favorite plugin if you use M plugins and stuff like that to ready to go. So you load up the project and you can record already, So
Yeah.
it's just a way of taking a shortcut for things that just repeat.
Yeah. It's very easy to over time doing certain things, a few different times before you're like, why do I keep creating new guitar tracks or new instrument tracks or whatever? It's just like, yeah, it's just, I think through doing that, I think especially working for Soundiron, like, because I learned a lot about, just how can you template your workflow or make things, to allow you to get more done quickly. Because I know Mike and Greg and, they're pretty big advocates of that stuff. Like anything you can find to like speed things up, like experiment with stuff. And I do that with video editing as well, stuff like that. So it's like anything to be able to knock stuff out a little bit quicker is always a good thing.
And then Dirk,
Right.
I saw you also have a course, and it says how to write music for libraries, film, and TV placements. So what do we learn in this course?
It was just my idea of same that I said with the shop, just a way of trying to create more avenues of securing your cost of living and just it's not all about making money, but of course we need to survive as well and need to buy our food. And so this is just another means of putting food on the table. And education, I think, is a huge factor, not only in this industry, in many, many industries. And again, especially with COVID, people being at home, having time to look into other things. I just saw a rising number, not of only of courses being offered, but also requests. And since I have been doing my kind of educational YouTube channel for the last 8 years, probably, and since I said I have been doing production music for the last 10 years, this is something that I know one or two things about. So I just felt, okay, let's put together a course on how I approach it, how I tackle different genres, how to write in different genres, kind of a general overview how the whole industry works and some ways that can help you to get into it or just help you hone the craft of working in the field of production music.
Well, I have to imagine that people are asking the same questions over and over again, right? So it's constantly like, what DAW do you use? Very simple questions, and you're repeating yourself a lot. So at some point, you're like, let me just package all this information together, and then you can buy it if you're interested, right?
Yeah, pretty much exactly that. People ask, and you shall deliver.
So what MIDI packs you buying?
MIDI chord packs, baby.
What MIDI chord packs you buying, baby? What's going on with that? No, I'm just kidding.
I have not bought a single MIDI chord pack, but I'm selling MIDI packs on my page as well on the shop. It's just, I mean, I have created so many. Actually, that started with you guys back in the day. I remember for the
Apocalypse loops.
Apocalypse percussion ensemble. I created some MIDI loops for that.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of in the nature of myself. I did that long time ago before MIDI packs was a thing.
Yeah.
Maybe not, but the thing is, so I have some general things that I usually do. I have a library of myself through the years of my work accumulated of stuff that I use regularly. Same with templates. So if you have some stuff that you use again and again and again, you can have like a library of little MIDI templates, MIDI ideas that you can regularly use. And if I have them, why not sell them? So at some point, it just makes sense to create a pack of percussion loops, of string loops, action, trailer string stuff. These are not full compositions. These are just like either little elements that work within a mix or a cue, or just song starters, so to say, or just something to give you an idea. And I don't see nothing wrong about that. Like nobody is copying anything. I consider construction kits from sample libraries worse, where you have the full track recorded and just say you compose something by rearranging the loops from that track. But in the end, I mean, it's still that same track unless you just take a little element out of it. But so I'm not a big fan of construction kits, but something that gives you an idea or something that triggers a spark to create something new, even if you don't end up using something from that MIDI at all. Or maybe you use the loop in your track, but you create something around it. I'm totally fine with that and totally do that myself as well.
So do you normally just like take the MIDI clip and just like export that as like a little MIDI file, or are they like associated with whatever percussion library that you're using, or how does that normally work?
For the most part, it's library specific. So the percussion loops that I have released are specifically for heaviosity damage, for example. And it makes sense because a lot of these libraries have their own standards. Not everything follows the general MIDI standard. Of course, you could release MIDI packs that are general MIDI compatible, but that doesn't help you in the world of sample libraries and DAW and Contact and stuff like that, because every developer has their own mapping, and that's a lot of work on the client side to make that fit. And I think then it's just easier to okay, this is, if you have damage, these loops are for you. If you have Soundiron Ape, these loops are for you. For me, it's kind of good in a way because I can create the same product for different avenues, like same MIDI loop pack for damage as I could do it for damage 2 or for, like I said, Soundiron Ape and other percussion libraries. And I don't necessarily need to sell them all in one pack. You know, you could say, okay, there's one product for this, one product for this, one product for this. Right. Actually, I haven't done that yet. I should do that.
So, there you go. You got an idea.
Right. The next idea is coming. But it just doesn't really make sense to me to broaden that out. It's library specific. Same with the acoustic guitar loops that I did for Orange Tree Samples acoustic guitars. They have a very special way of being programmed, and it just doesn't. It neither works in the general MIDI world, and it also doesn't work with other developers like Ample Sound or whatever's out there in terms of acoustic guitars. So it is very. Oftentimes, this stuff is very library specific. The strings packs that we have, they work pretty much with any type of short string that you may have available. So that's a little broader in its approach.
There's not a lot of standardization between developers. So you have a Cubase, you said you have a Cubase template, but you are also using Studio One. So what prompted the switch there?
I started with Cubase templates. Studio One followed shortly after. I do have some templates available for Logic as well.
Okay.
Some templates are not available yet for Logic because I'm just restricted in the way I can build these templates, because I just have a MacBook with 8 gigs of RAM, like an old 2013, I think, or 16. Yeah. So I need to get a proper Mac to be able to offer the same templates for Logic as well. I just can't set them up right now. Otherwise, I would have them in the shop already. My main DAWs are Cubase and Studio One, that's for sure. And Studio One has taken over the spot of which DAW I open most on my system over Cubase, with a one simple reason. Cubase will always be my first love and my main DAW that I just know inside out, because I've been working with Cubase since Cubase actually. That was the first version that didn't even have a piano roll editor. That came later. So that was the first time I had my hands on Cubase. Cubase has one little bit of a disadvantage. It just carries a lot of load from the years of development. It's like 20, 25, 30 years old, nearly, I think 25. And has always been improved, of course, and it works for sure. But Studio One came a few years ago, came along as the fresh player, built from the ground up. And to me, I cannot really pinpoint exactly what the main differences are. In the end, it's timeline, a record, and the play button, and you have some tracks that you can work with. But to me, Studio One feels a bit snappier in the way they approach, like dragging plugins onto the track and stuff like that.
How that's to really duplicate
cool. Things. Just minor things that just make it snappier to me. But the most important thing is when I work in my big template, my 1,000 track template, with pretty much every channel has Slate VMR put into the chain. So I have some kind of EQ compression right away available for every channel. So it's a pretty hefty template overall. And idle Cubase has that sitting at around 50% ASIO or CPU load. And Studio One with this pretty much same setup is sitting at around 30%. So that was for me mostly the reason it just seems to me that Studio One is a little more efficient in utilizing the resources of the system. like I said, overall, it just feels a little bit snappier, but it also has its downside. It still has teething problems in some areas. And
Sure.
I have been lucky enough to be in contact with some of the developers and suggest some of my ideas, what I think will be helpful for the workflow. And some of these things have even been realized. What I love about Studio One and the whole team behind it is that they're incredibly responsive to user feedback and also incredibly responsive in terms of implementing feedback into new updates. So they're very much behind it to give these suggestions an ear and to realize them as soon as possible, if possible at all.
Yeah, it's funny because I've seen you and Alex online, and like, yeah, I'd always see you guys like going back and forth. Like one day he's like all about that. Oh, I went back to Cubase, and then you'd be on PreSonus, and then you would go back, and then I would always see you guys kind of like.
Yeah, I think for being on the videos, etc., I think it's more like a question of customer service, like showing some peers at some point just working Studio One for the Studio One folks, so they can see how it works in their DAW, and then some days working in Cubase for the other folks for them to see to work in their DAW. Mm-hmm. For me, there is not really a trigger that makes me decide today I use Cubase over Studio One or vice versa, just what I feel like. But when I work for myself, most of the time I'm actually using Studio One.
Yeah.
Meanwhile.
Well, you've inspired me to open it. I've had it for a couple of years and I don't think I've ever opened it.
It's definitely worth a try. It's just, they are in version 5.5 already as well. And for a long time, Cubase was way ahead of the game when it came to MIDI editing and organizing of big templates, expression maps, and all that stuff, where Cubase was on the forefront of making life as a media composer or as a big template user, making that easier. But others have been listening and have been following along and implementing their own solutions. And meanwhile, the kind of expression map similar to Cubase, what Studio One now has, is very solid and very convenient. And in parts, even better done than Cubase has done. But then Cubase has some other functionalities that Studio One does not have yet. So it's not a battle between the two. They both have a place, in my opinion.
Nice.
Yeah, I think Studio One's definitely, like, if you are a Cubase user and you're thinking about switching DAWs, that's like the most makes the most sense to go to that, because there wasn't some people from Steinberg actually like working in there as well.
Yes, the minds behind Studio One have been former, I don't know for sure, but I think like former Steinberg developers or employees or Nuendo. At least there are some people from the Steinberg camp kind of took to Studio One to, I guess, improve what they couldn't realize in Cubase. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But I don't know for sure. But the thing is that there is, of course, a lot of similarities between the two. But then look at any DAW. Like I said, they have a start record button and tracks and a timeline, and there you go. So video editing programs, if it's Premiere or Final Cut Pro, in the end, they all are there to do the same thing.
Yeah, there's always going to be those basic functions of, like, you got your tracks over here, you got your main timeline arrange area right here. And I used to use Logic, and eventually there was just so many things about it. Like, if Logic ever had slip editing, I probably would have stayed. But there was just like certain things about Logic that was and there was Logic Pro 9 at the time. And I eventually started seeing a lot of people I knew using Cubase, and I was just like, all right, that seems like something I want to give a shot, especially with the slip editing stuff, because I was doing a lot of guitar editing at the time. And ever since then, I messed around with Studio One for a little bit, but I can't get myself to, like, that time it takes to like immerse yourself in a new DAW or like, any kind of like a new software. It's like, I haven't found a real reason to like invest that time. Maybe one of these days I'll just like work on a different type of music in it.
Like they say, stick to your horses, especially if you're successful or comfortable in what you're doing. If you feel comfortable with what you're working with, and I mean, I know you're on Cubase and works great and works fantastic for you. There's just no need. I mean, there is the new UAD DAW. There is there's so much other stuff that there's Reaper, of course. There's so much other stuff that you could try out just for the sake of trying it out. I actually just recently installed a demo of Fruity Loops on my system.
Oh, wow.
Just to see just to see if I am able to possibly create. I mean, I look at it from the shop side of things to try to develop as many different templates for different platforms as possible. But I gave up on FL, to be honest. It's not really the DAW to create templates with, at least not for me.
It gave up on you.
Right, it's so different. For me, it makes a little more sense to look into different DAWs and see how I can make my products work with them. And if I want to create a template for Logic, I need to find my way around Logic before I can sell a template to people, because there are a lot of people out there that know a lot more about Logic than I do. But the basic principles apply there as well. I just found some funny things that kind of contradict the name of the DAW. It's called Logic, and some stuff
not logical.
Not really makes sense to me. Not logic. Well, just an example. In my main template, the busing routing system. So I have the instruments. They go to the sub buses, and that gets summed up in the stem buses, so to say. So you have two tiers that the signal is running through. And in Cubase, Studio One, pretty much any other DAW, when I select the stem and solve that, it exports the stem because the signal is running through. It's coming from the instruments through the instrument buses and then into the stem. If I do the same thing in Logic and solo that second tier stem, it exports silence, although audibly the signal is running through. So in Logic, you have to create an empty Midi event on that stem to be able to export the audio. It's crazy. Only on the second tier. The first tier, if you export the first group, so to say, that is fine. You export it and the audio runs through. You don't need to do anything. It only happens on the second tier. I don't know why. It doesn't make sense to me. Yeah, it kind of contradicts, especially since every other DAW and every logical real-life scenario, if I route my system here and route my audio here and route it here and it runs through that bus, then I export that bus and it's done. No, Logic says, I see the signals running through, but I don't give you that. You need to create an empty region on me before I export that.
Yeah, they said, not in this house. That's not the way we do things.
Yeah, right, exactly. So yeah, that's the pet peeves I have with Logic a little bit. And I had to search for that for days on the internet actually to find that solution, how to export stems in a second bus, so to say, because nobody seemed to be aware that it was not possible.
Yeah, that's always fun when you're just like scouring through the internet trying to find a solution for some stupid thing that happened. Like, have you ever had that happen in Cubase or something where like some little thing got changed or when you didn't even realize it and you're like, why is this like cursor thing always like I had a situation where normally when I would hit stop on the space bar, the cursor would go back to where it started from, but I had some things tweaked. And it was like where cursor follows the events or something, where like when you're trying to line up certain MIDI notes with like picture, it was like to where it always followed that. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And I totally forgot that I had that enabled. And then I had a thing to where if I had like a MIDI file or like, like little MIDI section selected, it would keep like the cursor would jump back to that. And I was just like, what? So I was like trying to figure out like, why is it not just going back?
Yeah, especially when you have like custom settings and especially after like a major or a 0.5 update or something and everything is changed, although it says to import all these settings, but then you realize, well, it says it does, but it doesn't. Yeah, that's the fun part.
Yeah.
We have our worst bugs in Logic for our products. Like people will message us about MIDI feedback issues and like pedal sticking and just all kinds of weird, strange bugs that only exist in Logic.
Yeah, we don't want to bash anyone. Every DAW has its place. And I mean, I have seen so many composers doing fantastic work in Logic as well. So like I said, just stick to your horses and just go with what you're comfortable with. If you're starting out, you have the freedom or maybe the curse of choice. That is really something that you cannot really define.
Pick your own poison, as they say.
Yeah, right. Once you settle in on a system, I mean, there's never reason to learn something new and look beyond the edge of the plate. If you're comfortable with Cubase and don't see a need to switch to Studio One, for example, then just simply don't. Just stick to what you're comfortable with and what helps you get the job done. This is in the end what counts.
Yeah, I think it is worth like maybe experimenting with sometime because I really do love that feature of just dragging in plugins. I think that's really cool. And it's one less thing of like right clicking, load an instrument track, select which one you want. Because if you have like a bunch of different virtual instruments or samplers, like just having all those right there, and just like that in itself is a pretty big workflow.
Well, so some other stuff as well that is, in my opinion, just superior. back to the topic of creating templates, and when you have a bunch of instrument channels, for example, where you want to have the same, like the Slate virtual mix rack or something like that I oftentimes use, where you want to have the same plugin on all the channels, but I want to not to load it from the get-go, but copy the one that I have on the other channel. So in Cubase, you can only copy one by one. So you can hold the Alt key and then drag it over, then it lights up green on the empty spot, and then you can drag it in there. In Studio One, I can select all the channels, don't even need to hold the Alt key. Move that plugin from the other channel once, and it will apply to all the channels at once. Things like that just make it, like I said, a little more snappy and a little more modern, I would say.
That's pretty cool. I'm learning about it right now. I'm like, you're trying to convince me. I think you're doing a good job.
Not trying to convince anyone. Like I said, just use what you feel most comfortable with.
So if a composer is just starting out and they're like trying to get their feet wet and they're trying to switch from amateur hobbyist to making money with music, do you have any advice for those people?
Don't do it.
Don't do it. That's a good start.
Okay, if you're still listening, then maybe. So it is, in my opinion, like with any other profession. It is not necessarily something specific to being a composer or being an actor or being a carpenter or whatever. You need to hone your craft and you need to be good at what you do. If that's the case, so if you feel comfortable with the type of work that you can put out, you will inevitably find an audience for that. It may not be tomorrow, it may not be within a day, and I know for a fact, either from myself, also from other fellow composers, that the transitioning part is the hardest, from being not a full-time composer, doing it as a hobby on the side, trying to build something, build momentum, up till the moment they say, okay, I'm going to quit my day job and I go in full throttle and try to make a living out of it. That is the hardest part to do. You need a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to get to that point. It's there's no sugarcoating it. It is hard work, and especially in the beginning, it is even more work than it is later down the line when you start to gain your returns of your music plays, so-called mail money, when you get your music on TV and you get the PRO statements and stuff like that for the usage of your music. But up till that point, you just have to crank out the music, you have to get better at the music that you crank out, and you have to find the partners to partner up with to help you getting it into the right hands, meaning getting it to the client so your music ends up on air, which is where the money is. Music that's sitting on the shelf with a library doesn't help you earning money. It just sits there on the shelf doing nothing. So it needs to be used. So you need to find partners that help you getting it used. That brings us inevitably to the next question. How do I choose my partner to get the music out there? Which would be a podcast completely on its own. How to find the library to work with. What tips can I give you? Be consistent with your output. So keep honing your craft. Put stuff out there, no matter whether you have a publisher or not. Put stuff on YouTube, on social media. Build not necessarily a fan following, but if you expose yourself to the outside world, you will automatically get in touch with other people that may be in need of your services, for example, or like your music and say, well, you might be fit for a library. It's rarely the case that the library gets in touch with the composer. Usually it's the other way around, but things have happened, of course. So, but if you don't expose yourself to the outside world, nobody will hear or know about you. So you need to find an outlet to make yourself heard. And at the same time, also, it's the same principle if you're looking for a girl and go into the bar with a big sign on your head, wanna ... You will likely not end up successful.
You're going to strike out.
In that night.
You're going to end up in jail is what's going to happen.
Possibly. Yeah. So, and the same is, I mean, when you walk around and approach publishers or people who run libraries, dude, you got to work for me. That is off-putting in some kind of way. And a lot of these, we're still talking about people. We're talking about relationships. Not necessarily everyone is your friend. But Hans Zimmer once used to say, first and foremost, you got to be a good hang to make contact with people. You need to be somebody that is fun to be around with. The same applies here. And then there are events that help you get closer to the people that you need to get in touch with, like, for example, the Production Music Association that once a year sets up the Production Music Conference in LA. Unfortunately, it was only virtual the last 2 years, but it's still happening. I was lucky enough to attend a few of these, and this is, in my opinion, one of the absolute best possibilities to either get in touch with library runners. Everyone is there that is kind of name and game in that business. And also they have amazing content with panels and information. So there's just stuff available that is not available anywhere else. On a biggest scale, so to say, these type of conferences help you get in touch with these people. But then you also have the small scale. Search locally. Look for production houses that do commercials. Look, if you're in a village somewhere really far out in the land, obviously you may need to take a trip to the nearest bigger town. Might be. I don't think that next to the goat there will be an advertising company, but you never know. But yeah, so something where a little bit industry is kind of centered and placed might be helpful, because these industries need their products and companies advertised. So there needs to be someone that does the advertising for them. These advertisers need music. That's one of the things you can try to get in touch. If it's more geared towards film, of course, you can go to universities that offer film scoring programs. You can offer your services for students, start to get in touch with people that way. And then last but not least, of course, there is the way of cold emailing. I wouldn't suggest cold calling. That might be a little too much. But of course, you can create an introductory email about who you are, what your favorite music is. But most importantly, don't make it about you. Make it about the library that you're approaching. So why do you contact them? You have a certain style in your library that I see fitting with what I do. Mind taking a look to what I have? Is that something you could be interested in? And try to find out as much as possible about a library that you want to approach. Try to be personal. If you know who the library usually a website reveals who the runners of the library are, or who your point of contact at this library is. Try to make it personal. Never start with something like "hi" without a personal.
To whom it may concern.
Yeah, hello.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Good people over at
whoever. You don't know how many emails even we as a label get weekly that just ignore the minimum standards of kind of proper communication. So this is something to really keep, research and proper communication. So this is something to keep in mind. So in Germany, we used to say, kind of translates to it comes out of the woods as you shout into it. So I don't know if there's a proper saying for in English as well, but it's kind of gets the sense across. So the way you behave, the world will return it to you.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
If you have proper manners, you might be treated with proper manners.
You get what you deserve.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think something interesting is that historically musicians have been poor, like court jesters and painters and artists. Like we haven't been living in the lap of luxury. And then there was this weird period where session musicians made a bunch of money and rock stars happened and all this. But the majority of people making music or doing art are not making a living doing it. It's a hobby, it's an outlet. But if you're making a living from music in any way, you're in the top 10% of that industry probably. So it's funny that you say don't do it. When you say don't do it, you could just supplement your coffee job or whatever with making music. And it's not always important to monetize your hobbies either.
That's another thing. If you are really serious about making that a proper career path, like I said in the beginning, you need to be willing to put your blood, sweat, and tears into it.
It's a grind.
To grind, exactly. But you always need to be aware that there is a possibility of failing. That is something that goes along with that, because there's no guaranteed success in that field. You can be an outstanding musician. That doesn't necessarily mean that you will play the stages of the world. So I think a good, proper sense of realism is also helpful. You can dream, of course, but you also have to every now and then put these dreams into perspective and see, okay, how realistic is it to actually get there? Or the other way is, of course, to build your own step-by-step plan and say, okay, what steps do I need to take to get to where I want to be?
Yeah. Reverse engineering anything, I think, is always such a great way to kind of approach things, because it's like, all right, I want to do this. All right, well, now what are the steps that you need to take to get there? If your first thought is, oh, I just need to meet that one person and that's going to get me the job, but you're not putting in all the 10,000 hours into your craft, like you're skipping some steps because you're just trying to shoot for the stars right away. But it's like, well, you got to build a rocket ship first. You can't just jump on a trampoline and hope that's going to get you there, you know?
That's when Icarus learned that the wings don't work in the sunlight because he skipped some steps on the way.
My personal goal is to get into a fender bender with Steven Spielberg and then, shake hands. And that's the dream.
Then what? What after that?
Well, then my charming personality wins him over and I'm scoring Saving Private Ryan too.
Okay. All right. Now we're talking.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah, it's that easy.
I'd be like, can I get eaten by a T-Rex in one of your next Jurassic Park movies? That's all I want.
All right.
So, Dirk, you're a well-traveled individual. What's a typical day right now for you? What's your schedule? It's nighttime where you are, right?
It's not nighttime. It's like 8:30 in the evening, so it's early evening. It's still bright outside. That's a cool thing about being closer to the equator here. So it's till 9:30. It's still not dark. But yeah, I'm a night owl anyway. I'm used to work at night, and I'm used to working at night. And since my business partner is still in the US, a lot of phone calls happen after 10 due to the 9-hour time zone difference. And that gives me the freedom during the day to take care of some other stuff, take care of some family stuff, pick my son up from school, enjoy the beach. Usually during the day, I do most of the office kind of tasks, emails and all that stuff. And then the creative part actually starts after 10 for me. And Spain has that great tradition of siesta, which comes very handy for me. So I tend to sleep like 6 hours a night, usually from 3 to 9, something like that. And then have another 1 or 1.5 hours of siesta in the early afternoon. So that I get my around 8 hours of sleep a day. I try to still maintain that amount, although it does not always work. But that gives me the freedom. And since I have my studio at home in a separate building, so to say, so outside of the house, I can pretty much work all night if I need to and want to, and take care of family and other stuff during the day. So cool. I love the freedom that comes with that kind of job.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's a great schedule. When you feel overwhelmed or unfocused, what do you do?
Either just grab the car, head 10 minutes down to the beach and take a swim. That usually clears the headspace pretty quick. Or oftentimes, luckily it doesn't happen so often that I feel like uninspired or have my head not in the space where it needs to be. But what helps for me is just catching up with some movie I haven't watched yet, something, just checking out HBO Max or Netflix, some of the new releases, something that I haven't caught yet. Or just yesterday, I had some time left, and I knew that that number 8 of the new season of Picard was still waiting for me because it was released on Friday, and I haven't had the time to check it. So that's an hour easily gone, but that helps to focus on something, or not focus at least, just getting some information into your eyes without much thinking about it. And usually after that, I'm back in the game and can concentrate on whatever I want to do.
Nice. That's a good answer. Okay, I've got a few more questions for you, and then we can wrap this up. The first one is, do you have a best recent purchase under $100?
Yes. And Craig will like that because 99 euros intro price for the latest Neural DSP release for the clean Tone King.
Oh, yeah. I haven't gotten that one yet. I have all the other ones.
I got it, and I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
And since they had a sale going on, so I grabbed I think the California one for 49 euros as well. So these were the latest two. The first one I got was the Soldano. emulation, and yeah, I just think that the Neuro DSP is just like in their own league. It just sounds incredible.
Yeah,
and I'm not a guitarist, but I watched the demo video of the Tone King, and I said I always wanted to have a Fender amp, and this is the closest I can get to actually putting a Fender amp into my studio. So I'm fine with that, and it sounds gorgeous.
Yeah, I think that's the only one I haven't gotten my hands on yet. The band I play in is actually endorsed through Neural, so usually they're pretty nice and send stuff over. I just haven't hit them up yet, but yeah, I've been wanting to check that one out just for that, have a nice, nice twangy tone, because I mean they've done so many other like the Gojira and like the Foreign Nameless. They have so many that are like geared toward metal, but I think it's cool that they've been diversifying and doing some other stuff that's not metal.
I highly recommend to check out the Tone King, not only for the twang, but also just the clean tones are so buttery and nice no matter which guitar you throw it just sounds gorgeous. Obviously it sounds best with a Strat or with a Tele, but it's amazing. I really love it.
So are you running direct into your interface and then using that, or do you have a pedal board, or what's your chain?
I have some, I will not show these. I have some cheap $29 Amazon pedals to run stuff through. And a volume pedal just in case it's needed, but for the most part, I actually don't use them. Sometimes I use the compressor because it helps to give a little more body to the guitar. And I have more guitars than I should have, not being a guitarist.
I know you say I'm not a guitarist, so I'm like, I see a few. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of stuff. I mean, the latest one I got that I'm really proud of, it's actually Thomann is the European equivalent to like Guitar Center, like the whole Europe-wide music distributor, and they have their own line, Harley Benton guitars. I know that I think meanwhile they are available in the US as well. It's like I think Harley Jackson is for either Sam Ash or Music Center has Jackson as like their cheap knockoff guitar type of things for the original brands, and Harley Benton is that one for Thomann. And they have this was my latest acquisition last year, the Harley Benton Pro Series. This thing is a beast and sounds gorgeous and looks gorgeous, by the way, as well. I think this is a beauty.
Nice. It almost kind of reminds me of like a PRS or something a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's a PRS knockoff, to be honest, and I didn't want to name it like that. But yeah, it sounds gorgeous, and it's just fun to play around a little bit. Like I said, I'm not a guitarist, and if I need good guitars, I just call Craig and say, okay, can you record something for me, please?
Like, Craig, you want to just like drop some noodles all over this track?
Yeah, right. And but if I record something myself, it's usually straight into the interface and then doing everything else in the software. The only thing I'm still tinkering with is getting Big Sky at some point to create these lush type of reverbs. On the other hand, I mean, we have that in the software as well. But yeah, straight in and doing most digitally.
Yeah, I understand that.
Keeping it in the box.
Keeping it in the box. Keep it simple. The next question is your favorite YouTube channel or podcast or TV show at the moment?
Like I said yesterday, I caught up with Picard, which is kind of one of my favorite TV shows at the moment. I wish I would have more time to watch TV. YouTube channel. Recently, I have been watching a lot of YouTube channels. No specific. I'm a big fan of Peter McKinnon. I love the stuff that he is doing more on the documentary side of things.
Yeah.
What's up, everybody? I think he's just, funnily enough, I have followed him from early days on, actually. I mean, he's been grown so fast and has become that YouTube superstar. I was with his channel very early on. I think when he was still below 1 million subscribers, like, I don't know how many, but for a while. And just like his personality and the way he explained things, and since I'm a little bit interested in cinematography and video, obviously due to my channel and doing videos myself, this is one of my favorite channels to watch. But even more for like his when he's doing these documentary style videos where he's like even just on a boat trip with his friends. He has a very good hand and eye to showcase that very cinematically.
He's a good editor too, yeah.
Yeah, right. There's just a lot of, he has a very eclectic taste in picture and composition and how that all works together. And he's just seems to be at least a nice person. I mean, we only know the online presence, not the man himself, but he's to me, he's very impressive with what he has achieved within 2 or 3 years, not even. That's one of my favorite channels. And yeah, actually, I'm watching less music-related content. I'm watching more gear stuff in terms of video camera reviews. Just recently, because I'm on the edge of thinking of either a MacBook Pro or a Mac Studio. Like I said, with the templates, I need a bigger Mac to run that stuff and to provide other templates. And I want to have a PC counterpart. I'm on PC for the most part, but I want to have a proper Mac system. And the new Mac Studio looks impressive. And recently, I've been just watching a bunch of review videos and benchmark tests and all that stuff, because I'm still not sure if I want to go for that little box, just the Mac Studio, or if I want to go for the MacBook Pro maxed out that I can have like a mobile rig and set it up wherever I like without the need of anything else, because there you have the screen and everything is built in, so to say.
Yeah, I've heard amazing things about the M1.
Yeah, it looks very, very impressive. So still not decided. Let's wait for May when the next BMI check comes around. Let's see how much Mac is in there.
Right. That's a good way to do it. My last question is, what are some goals or achievements you're looking forward to in the next couple of years, or like goals that you are trying to check off the list, and what's next for you?
My first goal is, to be honest, is of course to push my company forward that I have with my business partner. So to get more of our music on air into clients' hands, get more of our music that we create published worldwide and make it available and usable worldwide through a net of sub-publishers. We have come a long way already, but we're still in the process of building a bigger network, of having sub-publishers in Europe, in the UK, in Asia. That is one of the main goals, of course, to get the company forward. Personally, for me, I'm digging back a little more into the world of trailer music. That has some, I was away from that for a little bit because the past couple of years, I was tired of all this just sound design only and more bigger Brahm hits.
You got tired of the sonic booms?
Yeah, so when I started out trailer music, there was still the need for like melodic, big, epic kind of stuff. And then came the big Brahm boom sound design era. Then we luckily fading away, had this era of trailerizing old tunes, 80s, 90s pop rock tracks, and trailerizing that. Thankfully, that's dwindling as well. And I have the feeling that the whole industry goes back more to melodic content, big, memorable themes that just make you want to watch the movie. And this is actually where my personal love, musical love lies, to create that type of music. And personally, I want to go back to write more of that and go back with some publishers and also do it on my own myself with my own company to get more of that stuff out there, to get a license and get it used and try to come in. I would love to see my music in a Marvel campaign and similar. So working on that.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
That'd be amazing, yeah. Well, Dirk, this was so much fun, man. Thank you for coming on. We will point people to your YouTube channel and to your templates, all of the available templates and docu-scores. And we look forward to seeing a trailer that you put in for Marvel sometime soon.
That would be great. Thanks for having me. It was a joy talking to you guys.
Absolutely, man. Craig, catch you next week.
All right, man. See you later.
All right, peace.